Welcome to the Daily Apple. I'm your host, Kevin White. Emma Ryan and I will dive into all topics related to the science of longevity, along with some other subjects we just find of interest, with the hopes to provide useful information for everyone. This stems from my personal interest to optimize the human condition, to not just live longer, but to live better.
Great inputs.
Yeah.
So
Stay
actually
steady. Do you check it multiple times, or we should just be recording this right now, man?
I know, right? Oh, you are?
Cool.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty consistent. Like if I, like when I'm cycling regularly, like I'm getting ready for a long ride right now. And so I'm more consistent in my rhythms of like, I'm doing a little bit less weightlifting, a little bit more on the bike. Cause I want to go do a almost 70-mile ride in August. And so, you know, every time I get off, it shows me a number, and I've never understood kind of what it does until I came and we did the VO2 Max with you and Sam explained how it works. And so what it's not actually getting is oxygen burn. Like it has no way to measure the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide I'm using. So what it's doing is looking at heart rate and using that as a proxy. So it's probably less accurate than what I'm getting in your office, but it is interesting to me that it's so far off. Because it's considered to be, it's using my Whoop data, which is pretty accurate on heart rate, right? And then it's considered to be one of the most accurate that's out there as it relates to like the cycle computer. So I don't know, I'm getting out of my depth pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, should I make an intro, I guess?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You don't have to.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, everyone, welcome back to the Daily Apple. Today I have my good friend, Chris Dingess. And it's kind of a special little episode. We're just going to be talking about, he had some ideas that he wanted to talk about with the podcast, which I thought was a great way to discuss it, kind of looking at it from a business standpoint, looking at our wellness and everything from a business standpoint, and totally reframe the whole conversation. And then whenever you said that, when we were visiting, anyway, it really got me thinking. And so I put some stuff together, and I think this is a really good way to view everything in a simple, concise, very functional way. And you ask a lot of questions and really like to get down to the meat, and you really don't let me.
It's a very kind way of calling me a big nerd.
Well, you don't leave me any wiggle room. So I appreciate that idea. And I think this is a great opportunity for a discussion. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Well, we've obviously been coming to see you as my care provider for several years, but somehow I missed that the podcast launched. And so after I saw it, you guys were like, 14 or 15 episodes into it. So I started just catching up on it and listening to it. So obviously have become a huge fan of what you're doing. I love the content and the style, and just, I've learned a lot. You know, there's no shortage of content that's out there. But I love that like you're my actual provider. It's not some like guy on the other side of a microphone in New York I'm never going to meet. But then also, you know, you told me a story once about how you'll be at a conference and you're the only physician that's there. Everybody else there is research scientists. And I love that because I'm a huge nerd. So when I start learning about something, I just have a desire to dig into it and try to get to the bottom and go, okay, what's really truth here? You know, how confident are people in what they're saying? Are they just out there bloviating, or is there actual science and data to back up what they're communicating with you? I haven't found a lick of exaggeration, or, you know, you're not trying to sell anything other than just helping people kind of get to achieve their health goals. I think that's really awesome.
We had a conversation when we first met, and I didn't even know you, and we talked on the phone for like an hour.
I'm sorry.
You'd ask me. It was a great conversation, but you just were just really digging in. Like, is this the right dude for me? Does he know what he's talking about? Is he? But anyway, yeah, I'd never before, but that was kind of funny. Yeah. But yeah, it's been fun. So it's been fun to work with you. Yeah. But tell people what you thought about with this idea that you brought up that we're going to go through today.
Yeah. So I draw a lot of parallels in my life. You know, things remind me of other things. And as we've been working together, one of the things I realized is what you're doing and the way that you're kind of working with your patients is very empowering. Like, I mean, that's one of the things I felt more empowered to know what I need to do in order to optimize, you know, the latter half of my life than ever after, tons of things. And it's really what the parallel I would draw is what we're doing is really similar to how a business looks at driving business outcomes. And so this is really the analogy I wanted to draw, which is to say, you know, in business, we look at any given result that we might want to drive in any area of the business. And so just to use an example that people might be familiar with, let's say you've got a business and you're selling a product to consumers. And so it's like, ultimately, what's the measure of success? It's like, well, or do we have revenue? Like if we want to grow the business, if we want it to succeed, if we want it to be healthy, we need revenue to be coming in. And so we need to get sales, right? Well, you don't get sales by going out and saying, I want to try really, really hard to drive sales. what you look at is say, what are the behaviors that consumers do right before they make a purchase, right? And so an example might be, if it's an online company, it might be putting items in a cart, right? Or if it's a retail establishment, it would be how many people are walking through the door, right? And that's what we would call a lag indicator. So the whole idea of this is called KPIs, or key performance indicators. And so key performance indicators are kind of like the health metrics that help a business determine, are we on track to do what we're trying to do or not? And so it's a key, I mean, it's important performance, like how are we performing up to expectations, an indicator going, it's not the actual thing that matters, but it's an impact for the thing that matters. And so if what matters is sales, then one type of key performance indicator, or KPI, is what we would call a lag indicator. And it's something that would happen right before the ultimate goal that we're looking at. And so again, the analogy would be, items in a cart online or feet in a door, the customers through the door. But then you go, okay, what are the things right before that? Like, what can we ultimately do to influence and increase the likelihood that people are adding items to their cart or that they're walking in the door? We're going to measure website visits, right? So a great example would be website visits would be what we would call a leading indicator. How many people are clicking on your ads or hearing about you from a friend or whatever it is they're doing, and they're visiting your website. And then the lag indicator would be how many people are adding something to their cart. They see something that's compelling to them. And so the whole idea is, as a business person, I'm going to look on, like, if I have good data measurement and I can accurately determine how many people are visiting the website and how many people are putting items in the cart, then I can go, okay, what's my cart to sales conversion rate, right? Okay, 35, 40% of everything that gets put into a cart ends up getting bought by the consumer. By the way, I have no idea if that's even remotely close to accurate, because I'm not in retail sales at all. That's not an area that I've had exposure to, but there's some percentage there, right? So the idea is, if I've got really good visibility into my data and I understand those metrics, then I've got an ability to materially impact sales in the future by focusing on activities that impact my lead and my lag indicators. And what I realized in all of our work together is that's the exact same thing that we're doing. Like, when I think about working with you, the ultimate goal is, I had a boss one time that challenged us to create our own personal heaven and our own personal hell. And the idea was like if you drew a vision of your life, and it's like, what do you want your life to look like at age 60? What do you want your life to look like at age 40? And it was like, kind of visioning, right? And mine was always, I'd be very healthy and very active, and I'd be like wake surfing with my grandkids, right? Or snowboarding on the mountain with my grandkids. And my own personal hell is I'm out on the lake and I'm super heavy and I'm not in good shape, and I can't do all the things I want to be doing. I'm a child. I've been a child at heart since I was a child, and I probably will always be a child at heart. So my personal hell was like, if I'm out on the lake and I'm in my boat and I feel super uncomfortable with my body because I'm so overweight and I haven't been taking care of myself, and my joints aren't in good shape, and then I'm not able to I just have to be a passive observer instead of an active participant. That was like a very motivating idea for me. And so it wasn't until we started meeting when I'm like, oh, I know right now today, like, the things that I can be thinking about that I can do that dramatically increase the likelihood. Can't guarantee it, right? There's no guarantees, but we can dramatically increase the likelihood that I'm going to be able to have that goal state I want, which is when I'm a grandparent and I'm aging and I'm 85, I can be out on the mountain with the kids snowboarding instead of sitting there, with my walker and, sipping on a whatever. That's kind of the big idea.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a great way to frame that. What I've thought about is my personal hell would be laying in a hospital bed with a chronic disease, having some kid that's old enough to be my son taking care of me as a physician or whatever. I've been on the other side of that, seeing that over and over again. I thought, this is not what I want. So that would be even worse. I'd rather be an observer. But I agree with you completely. And this is a great way to kind of visualize it. And the analogy is awesome. So cool.
So the question then becomes like, okay, if we think about it in three phases, if the goal, like the outcome, like our version of sales revenue, is being on the mountain at 85 on the snowboard for me, skiers for some of you guys, right? Some less cool people still skiing, but
purists,
but if the go purists, there you go. Yeah, I had a feeling you might be one of those OGs. So if the goal is to be on the mountain, enjoying it in whatever method it is, fully healthy, right, with your body being able to support the goals that you want to achieve and the life that you want to live, Then the lag indicators in my mind are all the outputs that we look at. So it's, and I'll throw out a few of them. I don't know if any of these made your list, but it's like, okay, what's your BMI? What's your VO2 max? We were talking about that one. We'll probably hit that one pretty quick.
Sure.
What's your bone density? That was a big one for me, right? And I'm realizing that, lean muscle mass. So some of those indicators, and then the lead indicators or the inputs are like lifestyle, going like how many hours a night am I sleeping and what's my caloric intake? And, those are some of those lead indicators. So it's been really empowering to go like, if I can get to 180 grams a day of protein, lift heavy 3 times a week, and get 2 to 3 sessions of cardio in, I can literally just watch my lean muscle mass go up and watch my body fat go down. That's very empowering, right? And versus in the past, just going like, I'm just gonna go try really hard at all these things.
Right.
And it wasn't nearly as precise as what I feel empowered to now. So my question to you, Kevin, is like, if somebody's like listening to this for the first time, or even for those, your patients that are in business, but have never made this connection, what are the most important ones? Like, what are the KPIs we need to know about? And, how do they fit into this whole kind of framework that I've kind of cooked up in my brain?
I've got about 8. I spent some time thinking about this, and it's funny you mention all that because you've seen all that stuff happen. So it's been fun, but
yeah, it's been amazing. Personal testimony.
And
if you're not visiting with Kevin, come see Prime Health Associates. It will change your life.
But this is, these things are something that anybody could do. They don't need to see me or anything, but these are things you can check and follow.
But they should.
But yeah, and our patients come to us because they're serious. It's not for everybody because it's a real investment. So
it's a lifestyle that you're choosing.
Yeah, so if you're not, then it's not really worth the time. But anyway, I would say one of the key performance indicator or benchmarks, one, VO2 max. I think that's really important. We all think about that really as far as elite athletes checking that sort of thing. But I would say that that's really been tied to longevity. You can tell somebody if they have a poor VO2 max that they're really not long for this earth, or that they don't have resilience whenever something comes along, like, a bad disease or illness or something like that, or, COVID pandemic. If you've got a poor VO2 max, then you're really in trouble. So measuring that and having that data and improving on that is something that if you're interested in this and, meeting those lag indicators is going to be important.
And so this one, it surprised me that you put this one first. And we were talking even before we got to filming, and just the whole idea to go, like you said a statement before we started, which is of all the ones you could look at, it's the biggest like indicator of health and longevity.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it would be the first, but it would be pretty high up there.
So like, let's say I've never heard of VO2 max before.
Sure.
Explain it to me like I'm a 5th grader.
Sure.
What is VO2 max?
So VO2 max is how I like to think of it as how well the pistons are functioning in the motor, in the engine, right? How efficient your engine is running. So it's how efficient your body utilizes oxygen. Okay. So it's not only a test of how you're doing at the metabolic level, at the cellular level, how efficient you are, but it's also cardiopulmonary. It's, muscle. It's all, cardiovascular, pulmonary function, all that stuff. If you've got a hiccup in one of those areas, it's going to give you a poor VO2 max. So it's kind of more of a global test there.
So is it fair to say that VO2 max would be something that measures a breadth of your health? Like it looks at a lot of different areas and a lot of different systems that ultimately go into successfully doing that. So how is it measured?
So it's measured by, you're on a bike or you're on a treadmill, which you've experienced this, and you have a mask and it does gas exchange and it follows that through a machine, and you're with us, we do. It's not an enjoyable experience.
Sam puts me on the Peloton and it's torture. It starts really simple. It's a nice ride through the park. And then by the end of it, it's like you're cycling up Mount Everest.
Yeah. Yeah. But it really gives you an idea on, fuel partitioning, like when you're utilizing fat, when you're utilizing carbohydrates. So there's a lot of data you get from there, what your zone 2 levels are and all that. So we can really get part of the fingerprint of the patient that's very specific. And, so it's super helpful.
So I'm curious to know, and I'll share an anecdote to my own VO2 experience. So we went in, I've done it twice. And the first time I did it, it was not great. And I had not been cycling a lot. And by the way, I cycle. I have a road bike and go out and have a neighbor, another patient of yours, ironically, and we go ride together a lot. And so I've been cycling a lot more. So I was really excited to go back in and do my VO2 again. And what I saw was my zone 2 actually went way higher, meaning like I was able to sustain zone 2 for longer, but my actual VO2 max hadn't changed all that much. And so in theory, what I realized is I had really affected endurance, but I hadn't really affected my max output ability. And that, at least that's the way I understood it. Maybe I misunderstood it, but all that to say, what Sam explained to me, and I'm curious if you would agree with this, is basically I had been doing more cycling, but I hadn't been getting my heart rate up into that max area and hitting that ceiling, which from what I understand now is really kind of the way that you impact that. Yes or no? You can correct me. I won't be offended.
Okay. Say that all one more time. We're going to cut that out and we're going to start over. Tell me, start over there.
Yeah. So basically what I found out after my last test is that I had increased my zone 2.
Right.
I could maintain zone 2, like the consumption, like oxygen consumption for a lot further into the test. But once I crossed over zone 2, I hit VO2 max almost as like I hadn't improved my VO2 max much. Right. And so what I understood is I increased my endurance, but what I hadn't increased was my max output ability. Does that make any sense, or we just need to throw this whole thing out? And
no, I mean, sure, we may throw it out, but no, I think that's so you'd been working out at steady state for a long period of time and not really pushing it, not doing any much like high intensity or anything.
Exactly. I was doing long cycle rides, and there were times we'd hit hills and my heart rate would go up, but it was very few. The majority of the ride would have been zone 3, maybe a little bit of zone 4, most of it was zone 3.
Okay. Yeah. Doing both those things improve your VO2 max. Your zone 2, I mean, sounds like you're pretty good on that, which is great for building robust mitochondria and replenishing those stores. So that's fantastic. That's nothing to, smirk at, but adding in some high intensity and, having that, being able to sustain a max heart rate is super important. Yeah.
Okay. So let's try this again and see if we can, maybe we don't need it. I'll give you another option on that. Yeah. So the second follow-up question I would ask, so Kevin, how would I impact VO2 max? Like ultimately, if I come in and do a result and it's like, okay, I'm not where I want it to be, what are the things I can do that most directly increase? What's the lead indicator, the input I can do from a lifestyle standpoint that would increase the output, or in other words, make my VO2 max higher?
I would say 2 things. HIIT training, like the Norwegian 4x4s has been shown to help build your VO2 max. The other thing would be zone 2. And I've heard, and I'm going to steal this from somebody, but it's like a pyramid, you might have heard this. So the base is like your zone 2 training. Okay. Like high ends, Tour de France, they spend so much time just in zone 2. That's kind of the base. And then your max heart rate or your, HIIT training is like that peak. So you're building area in the triangle. So they're both, 2 separate things.
They both matter.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with HIIT. I've heard of HIIT. I know about Tabata. I've never heard of Norwegian 4x4. So you're going to have to, that sounds like a piece of lumber, and I don't think that's what you're talking about. So, so enlighten me on what a Norwegian 4x4 is.
It's just 4x4, like high intensity for 4 minutes, slow for 4, fast for, it's just a HIIT training.
It's a form of HIIT.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So basically KPI, if I want to increase VO2 max, and I'm trying to drive that number, then the 2 things I can do, number 1 is sustained efforts in zone 2. And then the other would be getting into some HIIT training and hitting that 4 and 5 zone where you're like maxing out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And guys that are experts in the longevity space, like, they'll do 4 separate sessions of an hour. Like Matt Camerlin from Optispan does like an hour in the morning, and but I mean, it's something you can do and be on, even be, listening to a podcast, listening to a book. You can be, accomplishing other things.
Give me some benchmarking here. When you're saying 4x4 or 4 sessions of an hour, let's not mix metaphors. You're saying 4 sessions of an hour. Yeah. They're doing 4, like in a week, they're doing 4 different sessions
in a week. Yeah.
And at optimal state, if your whole goal is to increase VO2 max, how many of those would be zone 2 long form, and how many of those would be HIIT, and how long would you want the HIIT to last?
Now we're getting into nuance, and it needs to be consistent and whatever you're going to do.
Sure.
So if you do it for a week and then you say, screw this, I'm not going to do it, it's not a good idea.
Yes. You always remind me it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. I mean, but I would say, 3 times a week at an hour would be great. Zone 2 to start. And then like maybe 2 to 3 HIIT workouts. would be great if that's something that you can fit into your schedule.
So
Those things will move the needle, and I've seen it move the needle with patients.
So that would be a total of 7 cardio workouts in a week. Let's say I've got 3 days a week to dedicate to cardio, and that's it. What are you telling me to do?
I would say somebody's going to hate this, but 3 sessions of an hour apiece. I'd do 2 of those sessions would just be zone 2. And then the third one could be, I would just do HIIT.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2 to 1.
A long HIIT workout.
Long HIIT workout. I'm going to be a puddle on the floor.
Maybe 30 minutes on and then 30 minutes VO2 Max.
So one thing I am curious about, because I've done this before. This is actually funny. During the playoffs, I turned my Peloton. We normally have it facing the wall, and I turned it around where it's facing the TV so I could watch the playoffs. And I had intended to do zone 2, and I got so stressed out by the game. I was like, I was peaking up. I was like, okay, this is going to be a HIIT exercise. So, and then it made me think, if you do 40 minutes of zone 2 and 20 minutes of HIIT, are you getting the benefits of both or neither?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, because that's literally what I was doing.
Yeah.
I watched the fourth quarter come around. It was tight, and all of a sudden my heart rate's, I'm like.
I do. This is something that I'm working more on. This last weekend, I took a quick trip to Arizona, and I was in, going up Camelback Mountain, and, there were other locals going there, and there was this one guy, I thought he had poles on, and he only had one leg, but he was in great shape, went up, down, crushing it. And this girl came up next to me, and she just popped up like a bunny, and I'm just really thinking about what I'm doing, and I stopped her. I was like, what's your heart rate? She goes, well, it's like 110. And then after a minute, it was like 90. So she returned to resting heart. She was returning really quickly. It just made me realize I'm 50 now. I really need to get this number bumped up a lot.
That's a good goal. That's ambitious.
It's a goal. It's ambitious, but I need to do some work. Yeah.
Okay. So that's KPI number 1.
Yeah. Okay. So this one's really important too, is insulin sensitivity. See, this one a lot. So being insulin sensitive.
How is that measured? What's the number I'm looking at on my outputs?
It's a multitude of numbers. We're looking at some fasting markers there. So we're looking at, the best way to do it is an oral glucose tolerance test, but that takes some time. But, fasting insulin, fasting glucose, hemoglobin A1C. We also check a C-peptide. And that gives us kind of an idea of what's going on.
Okay.
All of those things need to be taken into context. So like if I'm seeing you for the first time and you get these labs done in the morning, and that fasting glucose is kind of high, if you'd have gotten in an argument with your wife, or, some big storm happened in the night and, blew out some windows or whatever, and you had some water leak or whatever, it's going to cause you some stress. That glucose is going to be high. So that needs to be taken into context. But a fasting glucose is important. So that needs to be nice and low. Second thing is that insulin level, we like that below 10,
Okay.
And you'd be surprised.
What's nice and low for the glucose? What would the number be?
Oh, sorry. Like 80, 85, 84
Okay.
would be good.
So you go, my fasting glucose is below 85, mid 80s or lower.
Fair enough. And then insulin, a lot of people, their pancreas is just churning out insulin all the time because we eat all the time, right? So fasting, the fasting insulin needs to be low. Whenever your pancreas should be at rest in the morning after you've been fasted, you shouldn't be churning out insulin. So that's one thing. The other thing is the C-peptide gives us an idea as well. So whenever insulin's made from the pancreas, it's made as proinsulin, which is insulin connected to a C-peptide, and that C-peptide breaks off and the insulin does its job. So C-peptide shouldn't be high in the bloodstream. But if you're churning out insulin,
what does it mean?
It just means your pancreas is still kind of churning out insulin more frequently than we'd like. So it just gives an idea.
Showing that things aren't optimized.
Right. And the other thing is the hemoglobin A1C, which you're probably familiar with. Just the A1C is an area on the hemoglobin that one of the areas actually that glucose will bind to. So, and the red blood cell lives for a period of 3 months and then it recycles.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. So that hemoglobin A1C, we can infer from that kind of an average or what your glucose has been over the past 3 months. It doesn't really show us the spikes and highs and lows, but it gives us kind of an idea.
It's a rough average. So it's kind of like a a proxy for a CGM, for continuous glucose monitor.
Kind of, yeah. CGM is great for in real time that you can kind of see what's setting you off, and and
so if you had the option and you could afford it financially, is it fair to say a CGM would be the most accurate way to determine insulin sensitivity?
You should be able to afford it because they're cheap now. But yeah, that's the best. I recommend that for everybody to at least do that for like 2 weeks a year. If you do it longer, it stress you out. So it's not a good idea, in my opinion. But
we have a good friend, Gary, who's also your patient, who has his badge of honor. It's always on.
Yeah. But if you want to die quickly, or if you want to have a poor elderly life,
that's kind of the opposite goal.
Then you just keep your glucose high all the time.
Yeah.
If you want to raise your risk for dementia, you raise your glucose and keep it high. We know that glucose binds to proteins and makes it where they're not as efficient working in the body. So if you're not going to, anyway, that's
So this is a big one.
Yeah.
So
it's huge.
If the lag indicator is ultimately good insulin resistance, right? Did I say that right? It's insulin resistance?
Insulin sensitivity.
Insulin sensitivity. Okay. Then what are the lead indicators? What are the lifestyle things I could focus on in order to try to drive that?
Okay.
I'm assuming I want to be eating lots of refined white flour, lots of sugar, right? Not extra. Is that the...
If it's got a drive-through, you probably need to avoid it.
Yeah. Don't eat with your hand on the steering wheel unless it's a smoothie you made before you left the house.
So what can you do? Right. So we'll talk about diet in a minute. One thing is sleep well.
Okay.
It plays a big part. And one of these things you'll find out, a lot of these lead indicators, they kind of flow into all these different categories, which is nice. Yeah. So
it's almost like that's how we were designed to live.
Yeah, exactly. So sleep makes a big difference. If you sleep very poorly, your glucose will tend to be higher the next day.
I've seen that where I went and did one of my blood tests that you sent me to do after I had a rough night of sleep, couldn't fall asleep, was thinking about some things, woke up, and then the next day it was like Jack. It was like completely higher than the other ones had been.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing is liquid sugar. If you're going to have sugar in any form, don't have it as a liquid. And if you do, it's going to,
why does that matter so much? That's really interesting to me.
If you have the same amount in a liquid versus a solid, say you have the cheesecake and it has whatever
45 grams of sugar,
45 grams of sugar, and you have a whatever drink that has 45 grams of sugar, whether you have like an alcohol drink that's loaded full of the simple syrup or whatever, it's going to hit your system faster. It's going to spike your sugar faster. If you eat that cheesecake, it's going to spike it, but it's going to be a slower rise. What you don't want is that rapid ascent.
And I guess that makes sense because typically the solid foods are going to have other fats and proteins and things in them along with the sugars that will cause your body to digest it more slowly. Is that the reason why?
Yeah, and it's going to absorb slower, or it's going to absorb slower. Liquid is just going to go straight through the portal system.
So if I'm on my fourth old fashioned, that's probably not nothing to balance that with.
Yeah. So, and again, if you're going to have an alcohol drink, right, don't have the sugary ones with all the simple syrup and crap. Yeah. So
we should have done this before I went to Hawaii and drank.
The other thing you can do is building lean muscle.
Okay.
Lean muscle is a good glucose sink, and it'll help you maintain blood sugar and all that as well.
I didn't actually know that there was a connection there.
Yeah.
In the gym, when I'm building muscle mass, it's not only affecting bone density, some other things, but it actually will help my body manage insulin more effectively.
Yeah. We learned that myokines and everything are released from the lean muscle, which helps mental clarity. It's good for the brain. So there's a lot of benefits there besides you just looking good in a Speedo on the ocean, on the Hawaii.
Always priority. Have you ever worn a Speedo?
I did do
we're about to get a story.
In the 90s, I did a triathlon in med school with some other dudes, and I was like, I'm supposed to get a Speedo. I was like, yeah, you're supposed to get a Speedo. So I wore a Speedo when I was in this triathlon.
Well, I guess if it's for a
now you can have I didn't realize you could get the legit, the shorts that are,
swimming shorts. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Kim doesn't ever talk you into it just around the around the back pool on the Saturday afternoon.
No, I don't think so.
All right. We've gone completely off the rails. All right.
Sure.
So that's our second KPI. What's number 3?
Okay. So number 3 is the ApoB.
Okay.
And I think that this is, I mean, of course, Lp(a) is super important, but really ApoB, if you were to look at one thing on your lipid profile, and I've heard this said before, if you drop off at ApoB, less than 70, then you just take cardiovascular disease off the number one killer of men and women.
Okay, so
So
back.
it's just huge. Yeah.
So ApoB
Yeah.
is a nickname, is a shortcut for, what's it stand for?
Apolipoprotein B. See, I'm an ER doc, so I kind of get straight to the point. So I'm
you
not a
fly
good
right
story.
through those things,
I'm not a good storyteller.
What, pray tell, is apolipoprotein B?
Okay, so from your cholesterol panel that you'll get as your HDL, your LDL, your triglycerides, total cholesterol, and all that stuff is great, but it doesn't tell me as much as I need to know from the apolipoprotein B. So what is that? So that is kind of like, it wraps the LDL, it's part of the LDL, and it allows LDL to cause a problem.
Okay.
Kind of like in high school, if you had a bad friend that was a bad influence and you did bad things when you hung out with him.
He's the friend.
He's like that dude that makes you,
So if I'm gonna go back through my cholesterol and just see if I remember this right. LDL, low density.
Yeah.
That's the lower healthy cholesterol, right?
No.
Sorry, that's the big fluffy unhealthy cholesterol.
Correct.
HDL, high density lipids.
Yeah.
That's the healthy cholesterol, right?
Yeah. So
or no,
I'm gonna
this 10-year-old data.
No, and that's fine. High density lipoprotein. The idea is that, and I'm not a lipidologist or cardiologist, and I may piss off some lipidologists out there, but this is the way I understand it. The endothelium. So you have all your arteries have 3 layers, and the inner layer is the one we're going to talk about here. It's the intima. So what happens is cholesterol gets underneath that layer, and then it can either leave or hang around and cause a problem. So HDL, let me back up. So LDL, because of ApoB enabling it to do so, is the way I visualize this, is able to get underneath that very thin layer, underneath the intima, and then it can hang out. It gets oxidized. It gets eaten up by macrophages. It becomes this kind of fluffy, soft plaque. It's the whole cascade it goes through. It's inflammatory. And that's the soft plaque. And that's what ruptures and can kill us whenever, you and I know of guys that have been out just going on a jog or something happens, and it's a really sad story.
Playing pickleball.
Yeah, exactly. So, so that ApoB enables that LDL to get past that layer. Now the HDL does the same thing. He just doesn't hang out there.
Okay.
And he leaves. So it doesn't cause a problem.
So when he gets under the layer, he ultimately ends up escaping, basically.
Right. He's high density. It's not a deal, but the LDL gets back in and it gets oxidized, which we check oxidative LDL as well. So you want that ApoB gives you a really good idea of how many LDL particles are running around the bloodstream. The LDL and HDL they're just vehicles for the same thing, right? It's just the way they're transported, which makes them do certain things in the locations which we don't want.
So where my mind goes is to say, if ApoB is kind of an indicator for LDL, why is that more important and more indicative than just the LDL itself?
It's a good question, because I've seen, I don't know if this is the right answer. I've seen the LDL be off, but the ApoB is the best indicator for the LDL particle number, which is the amount of particles that are in the bloodstream.
Okay. So when I get my lipid panel back and it shows my HDL number, my LDL number, my total number, what is that LDL number representing? Is that not total particles in the bloodstream, or is it something different?
Well,
I'm curious to know, and I don't know how much time you want to dedicate to this, but I'm tempted to go, and tell me if you think this is appropriate to ask this for the audience for this podcast, but to go like where I want to take this is to go, okay, like one of the first things I found out when I started getting into functional medicine is it feels like that cholesterol is one of the places that's the greatest divergence between the functional medicine view of the world versus traditional medicine view of the world, where functional medicine would saying that high cholesterol causes heart disease is like saying that fire trucks cause fires, like like fire trucks cause house fires. Like, it's not the case. It's like the cholesterol is actually something your body releases in order to try to deal with inflammation, and that inflammation is actually fundamentally the problem. And so we really shouldn't be focused on treating cholesterol. We should be focused on treating inflammation. If we're treating inflammation, cholesterol won't be there. Yeah. Do you want to go down that, or is that a totally different nerdy conversation that's not going to be relevant?
Well, yeah, we don't have to dog traditional medicine, but you can just say it's a different.
Send the ER doc.
It's a different viewpoint. So absolutely right. So inflammation does play a part. There's been, so yeah, go ahead, ask the question.
So the question that's on my mind as we're talking about lipids and we're talking about cholesterol, and this is one of the ones that I got exposed to the world of functional medicine. What I think is probably earlier than it feels like right now, like everybody I meet is aware of and talking about. And, obviously Peter Attia has become super popular. I got introduced to a guy named Mark Hyman probably 15 years ago and started listening to some of his stuff online and reading some of his books and realized that there's kind of like two schools of thought about lipids. Like there's a more traditional school of thought about lipids, not that it's right or wrong, but it's just like a viewpoint. And then functional medicine seems to have a little bit of a different school of thought about lipids. And the analogy I've used is in functional medicine, they would say that the lipids are like fire trucks. Like just because you've got HDL, LDL or whatever, the fire truck isn't causing the fire. The fire truck is there because of the fire, and that there's a deeper issue, which I think is inflammation. Right. And so I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on kind of the two schools of thoughts where it feels like more traditional medicine is like absolutely attack your lipid profile. If your cholesterol's too high, we need to get you on a statin. From what I've heard, statins are extremely effective, really healthy, lots of data that shows that's not, even people that are maybe medicine resistant, statins are extremely safe and good. But at the same time, functional medicine would say, well, if you treat the underlying cause of the inflammation, then you don't necessarily need the statin or even necessarily need to worry about cholesterol. So that's probably a huge bone for you to chew on. So maybe just take that wherever you will.
I do think there's usefulness in, PCSK9 inhibitors. We've got some people on, you've got to manage the problem there. The immediate deal is, if your ApoB is sky high, you've got risk factors. If we've got somebody, we did the, we haven't even spoke about, the Clearly CT angiogram read by AI. You've got to step in there. The cause there on some of those, you've got to make sure you're not leaving on the table. So like if you do have somebody with high inflammation for whatever other reason or insulin resistance and, their high sensitivity CRP is through the roof, or 4 or 5, or if you manage that problems, the lipids will follow suit. I mean, it's kind of a response to that. There's been cases of people with, poor dentition. They get that fixed and their lipids convert back to normal. I mean, I've just seen some case studies on that.
That's fascinating.
So to get your inflammatory, whatever's causing that in check is important. So looking at the whole person from that standpoint is important. Yeah. But in the meantime, I mean, I don't want to sit there with somebody with a, ApoB through the roof or whatever. But, our body needs cholesterol. We use it. We use it for, hormones and everything else.
Obviously it's a necessary ingredient for life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So to wrap that all up, the idea of ApoB is to say ApoB is a marker it's an indicator of overall lipid health in your body. And it's one of the most accurate indicators that can help us understand whether or not we have kind of good functionality in that part of our body. Is that?
Yeah, and just cardiovascular issues for sure.
So then the following question becomes, what are the things that we can do from a lifestyle standpoint? What are the inputs we want to do from a lead indicator in order to impact ApoB? I'm going to assume it has something to do with diet, right? I mean, that's probably the biggest one is to say. Yeah. Okay, so what is a good number for ApoB? Like what am I looking for? What does right look like?
Less than 80, less than 70.
Okay.
Yeah.
So less than 80 is okay, less than 70 is ideal?
Yeah, I say 80 because mine's 80.
Okay. You're grading on a curve?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at our labs, which we use Quest, as you know, I mean, it says normal is less than 90. I just personally prefer it less than 80.
Right. But we're not going for average, right? That's not the goal, is to be the average American. It's optimal.
There's no reason.
So what can I do? Let's say I get mine back and I'm a 112. What can I do to start trying to tackle that and drive that number down?
So you can do, as far as dietary, if you can reduce saturated fat, because you're decreasing the production from your liver. The liver's producing that LDL, which contains ApoB.
Okay.
So by decreasing the fuel, that's going to be important. And, you got to think about how cholesterol is made, how it's reabsorbed, how the body gets rid of it as well. So people always say, take fiber, right? Which is important. But I found that if people know why, like if our patients know why they're doing something, it seems to make more sense. And they take action, they make it work, and it works better. So fiber enables your body to get rid of it in your in your colon. I mean, that's the way you get rid of it, right? Is you poop it out. So,
Okay.
Soluble fiber will bind to the bile acids and it helps eliminate it from the body. And then there's plant sterols, which basically keep the colon from reabsorbing the cholesterol, which will happen. You get rid of it through bile and everything. The liver gets rid of it and then it can be reabsorbed, which is not what you want. So you want to slow down production and then you want to get rid of it.
So 2 clarifying questions. So what I heard you say is the things we do to really affect our ApoB are, number 1, reduce saturated fat. Number 2, increase fiber. So the first question on saturated fat is to go hot. Like we talk a lot about avocados and healthy fats. Like I've switched to grass-fed beef because they've got a different lipid profile and they have a lot more, not lipid profile, they get a different fat makeup. They have a lot more yellow fat, like omega-3s, a lot more similar to like salmon or tuna. So how do you think about saturated fat from some of those quote unquote healthy fat sources? Like what are the types of fat we should avoid, I guess would be like specifically?
Avocado is a great healthy fat. I mean, that's a polyunsaturated fatty acid.
Low in saturated fat. Okay.
Yeah. So you're not having, all fats aren't equal. And so if you're going to,
what about coconut oil?
Well, keep it to a minimum, man.
Yeah. So basically we want to reduce saturated fats and we want to try to consume more healthy fats, avocados,
nuts, seeds.
Okay. Throw grass-fed beef in there.
Olive oil. I enjoy grass-fed
beef. Yeah, same. We bought a side of cattle last year. I feel so much better about all those steaks and hamburgers and stuff.
And then, of course, aerobic exercise,
Before we jump to exercise, you said fiber, and that triggers a question in my mind. When I think fiber, I instantly think about grains, like oatmeal, whole fiber cereals. And that may just be advertising and the fact that all of the grain manufacturers are co-opting that. Obviously, we talk about doing moderate amounts of carbs, a lot more raw vegetables. Where do I get fiber if I'm not getting it from my oatmeal or my cereal or all the other things that have been advertised behind fiber?
Vegetables, green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables.
So a lot more spinach, a lot more kale. Basically anything that's dark in color is going to be more likely to be higher in fiber.
Yeah, like broccoli, sprouts. Do you like Brussels sprouts?
I love Brussels sprouts, actually. Especially if they're roasted really well.
I've got one of my patients who will not eat Brussels sprouts because he says they smell like a fart, which...
I mean, he's not wrong. Broccoli too, though.
A sweet potato has fiber as well, 4 grams. Artichokes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're right. So a lot of the vegetables that you're saying to eat are already going to have a lot of high fiber. Yeah. So if we're already doing a diet where we're trying to shift that carb intake from some of the grains over into a lot of raw or cooked vegetables, we're going to increase fiber intake as a result of that. Okay.
Yeah. And actually, if you cook the vegetables, you'll absorb a lot more of the nutrients, which is, like if you have spinach and you wilt it or whatever, you're going to absorb a lot more of the iron.
What about like in a smoothie?
I put spinach in my smoothie too, but...
You wilt it first?
No.
That seems weird. Wilted spinach in a smoothie just doesn't seem like that would work very well.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. And then you said cardio, and that's another one of those areas where you talked about like it's going to hit multiple things, right? Like cardio is going to obviously impact your VO2, but then it's also going to impact your ApoB.
Yeah, and it kind of helps. It actually helps enhance the activity of an enzyme to break down cholesterol.
Okay, so there's a metabolic function there too.
Yeah, sure.
We've gotten 3.
This is really kind of we've already talked about this, high sensitivity CRP. If you want to age fast, you stay inflamed.
Okay. So, CRP is C-reactive protein.
C-reactive protein.
Help us understand what C-reactive protein is.
It's a very sensitive marker for inflammation. You'll make cytokines like IL-6 and some other interleukins and all that. That's a signal to the liver, and the liver makes this C-reactive protein, which is something we measure. So you can be inflamed for whatever reason. You can even a little bit of cellulitis on your arm or sore throat. It's going to shoot up or whatever. So it's very, very sensitive.
Okay.
So again, taken in context, but I've got some people that come to us with just an inflammatory diet because they're just eating, garbage and a lot of Brahms or Chick-fil-A.
So inflammation is another one of those things that if you start listening to inflammation in the kind of longevity functional medicine space, you hear a lot about it, right?
Yeah.
And some doctors would go so far as to say that inflammation is the root of all disease. At the end of the day, every single thing that's not optimal about our body is in some way caused by inflammation. It seems like inflammation is almost endemic in the US. Like most people are walking around highly inflamed, or at least that's what these people would lead you to believe. So what is it about our diets that is causing all this inflammation? What are the things that we're consuming that are increasing the likelihood that we're going to have super high CRP and that we're going to be walking around inflamed all the time.
We're having a lot of processed foods. I mean, we are just, I mean, there's a lot of things with, chemicals, things that are preservatives. Thank you.
Yeah.
That just help. You can set a burger out on the table and it's going to look the same,
Yeah. The McDonald's French fry experiment. Yeah.
So if you have something, that's going to go bad, that's the stuff you're going to eat. You need to eat.
Right.
I mean, if you've got something that's got an expiration date and you better, get rid of it, then, that should be the mainstay of our diet.
So basically it's all the stuff we're eating that's hyper processed foods.
Yeah.
So it's your boxed cereals, it's your freezer meals, it's, like basically stuff that's coming in a box that has a really long shelf life is increasing the likelihood that we're going to have higher inflammation, higher CRP.
Sure. That's a real common thread. That being said, I do have some processed. I mean, I like some things but they're not going to be the mainstay of my diet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, it's the top of the pyramid, not the bottom, right? That's the whole idea.
Yeah. Not the biggest area.
So from a lifestyle standpoint, then, if I'm trying to impact CRP, is it diet? Are we going back to diet again and going to avoid processed foods? Is that the input that we're going to focus on?
Yeah, I would say that's the number one.
Okay.
The second thing would be, it would be sleep.
Okay.
Here we go again, right?
Yeah.
After our conversation with Jeff Dermer. Did you listen to that?
I haven't yet, no.
It was really something. I was like writing down stuff and listening, and
okay,
I was learning stuff. I've gone back and listened to it. What I didn't realize is as we go through deep sleep, our brain actually releases anti-inflammatory chemicals. So as he's working with athletes, Olympians and everything, we talked about some of those stories, really focusing and optimizing their sleep. Like they were going to Korea to link that out, and they stopped over in Hawaii for a week, which wouldn't be a bad stopover.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
To kind of get used to it, keep training, kind of shift everything.
And that they did that in order to so that it wasn't like a 12-hour.
So it wasn't
change.
A massive change.
Yeah.
They just kind of slowly get into it. But what he told me is like, you've got to have that deep sleep for a multitude of reasons, but it actually releases anti-inflammatory chemicals to the body. So whenever you're healing up from something, getting your sleep is really important. Getting that deep sleep, especially the first half of the night, really optimizing all that, and you'll heal up quicker. Which I didn't understand, which I didn't know.
One of the things that's really interesting, this could probably take us down a rabbit hole we don't have time to go down, but one of the things I realized, I made a pretty significant lifestyle change a few years ago, and it dramatically reduced my stress. I mean, my stress level went from very high on a very frequent basis, and my sleep overnight was like, I would go to sleep and just pass out and sleep so well through the night. And so it does make me think about, there's almost this cycle of like stress causes sleep, and sleep, if you're stressed, you're not sleeping really well. And if you're not sleeping really well, then your body's not cleaning out the things that cause the inflammation that ultimately results in stress. So it's like, there's a cyclical pattern there. I changed jobs. I was in a super high pressure career and just made a pivot. And so, it was at a company I loved and was there for a long time and had an amazing run, but it was, the culture there was just very hard charging. Yeah. And so I just made a decision, and it was partially driven by my health, but primarily just, it was a career choice of what I wanted to do with my time. And so made a choice to go do something different. And as a result of that, it just dramatically lowered stress and my sleep. I sleep so much better now. Like my whoop every night, my sleep score is like really strong. I'm not always great I struggle a little bit with the regularity, or not the regularity that, what's it called? Going to bed at the same time every night and waking up at the same time every morning. So that part of it, consistency, sleep consistency. But like my sleep percentage score is always like over 90, like a low one for me would be like 92. Like when I'm in the bed, I'm sleeping. Yeah. And then typically I'm doing really well on hitting the REM and the deep sleep. But if I wasn't wearing a whoop back then, but I would wake up a lot during the night, just wake up and not feel rested. Probably wasn't giving enough hours either. And so I do think that there's a lifestyle impact on, doing the things you need to do in order to sleep well. It's easy to say, I'll just sleep better. Yeah. But there's a whole subset of things that could be a whole other podcast. Maybe that's what Jeff talked about, on what we can do to sleep better.
Which brings us into, I'm just going to jump to the last one since we're talking about it, sleep. We probably should.
Oh, sleep is the last one?
Oh, well, yeah, we're going to, we've got a few more here and we'll bump over those real quick. But, sleep is, for a multitude of reasons. I think it's one of the most important activities. And to measure it, it can be difficult, but there's a lot of wearables that are useful. I use the 8 Sleep. I've used the Aura for a long time.
I'm a Whoop guy.
But I just ordered a Whoop. I've got a patient out of state that we were talking, and he was like showing me some of the new one.
The brand new one. I literally just got it last week.
Yeah. So it's coming.
So let's talk about sleep, because obviously the whole goal of this podcast is about maybe connecting with the business folks out there that are used to kind of using KPIs as a way to optimize outcomes in their business. And it just makes me think, like, when I was running hard at my previous company and I was living a high performance lifestyle, I would have believed it would be impossible to get 8 hours of sleep at night. Like, right, Batman. Like, there's just no way. Like, I've got this big job and I've got all these responsibilities and I'm trying to work out,
right?
And I've got kids, and like, so what do you say to people where they're just like, hey, I can't prioritize that right now. I'm just not going to do that. Or maybe they're struggling to understand why that should be so important, because it feels like the 900 calorie Orange Theory class they're doing is so much more important for their health than getting 8 hours of sleep at night. So speak to that maybe.
It's funny. I've got a guy, high performer, doing really well business wise, but his addiction is wellness.
Yeah.
And he will get up in the morning, he'll do a cold plunge, he'll do a workout, and then he'll go to the gym. He goes to Lifetime and does another workout, and then he'll go to work, and then he'll come home, and he'll do another workout. He's basically overtraining. His sleep is garbage.
Wow.
And I'm like, buddy, you're working against yourself. If longevity and wellness is really you're really overtraining. And all his biomarkers are consistent with that. We've done epigenetics with him as well, which show really profound, low-level, consistent inflammation. And he's just like a squirrel. The dude is just lit up. And his body composition's great, all that sort of stuff.
It's amazing. But metabolically, he's not doing what he needs to do to optimize brain health.
And I think that if he were to do this, he would be, he's setting himself up for some real cognitive issues later in life.
Yeah.
So if you want to, and there's been some parallels with, cognitive decline with lack of sleep. So like in our age range, if you've got, real poor sleep, you're not getting deep sleep, at least, 90 minutes to 2 hours optimally.
Yeah.
Then.
And that's, to clarify, of deep sleep, not total sleep.
Yeah. Good point. So you're kind of a setup for that. So I would say, to the people in business, you're not really putting money in the bank there. You need to put, that needs to be optimized, or you're just setting yourself up for trouble later. So it needs to be however that happens. And it doesn't have to be, if you don't have 8 hours or whatever, you're not going to do that. And it's just going to be 7 or 6. Just absolutely optimize that as best you can.
I'll just say, this is probably the one for me that's been the biggest change. So I don't mind sharing this publicly. I've got a family history of Alzheimer's on both sides of my family.
Yeah.
And when we first started working together, it's one of the things that you're like, actually your number one thing for me was 8 hours of sleep at night. It's like, you've got to get your sleep fixed. And then number 2 was resistance training, right? Because both of those are highly protective against cognitive decline if you have a family history of dementia. And so when you told me that, it shocked me. And it sent me down this whole rabbit trail. And that might've been one of our 1 hour phone calls that you're talking about. But like, I just started going out there and trying to find as a matter of fact, I think that's how I originally found the Huberman Lab, is I was looking for stuff on sleep, and he had just released a sleep episode. And so I started listening to him.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I don't want to advertise that on your podcast.
No, it's fine. Yeah. He puts out great stuff. Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
But it is, my whole paradigm on sleep has completely changed because I didn't realize, like, I think one of the statements I heard is there's literally, if you did every single thing that science knows today about what you can do to optimize cognitive function as you age, none of them, all of them together, is less impactful than just sleeping 8 hours a night and having a good night's sleep. It is so remarkably beneficial for brain health. And so I'm curious, was brain health the reason it's one of your top KPIs, or is it just the fact that it impacts so many other things? Like, why is sleep up there for you?
Both. For me personally, like you, there's a lot of Alzheimer's dementia in my family.
It's almost, so many people today. It's like, it genuinely feels like it's becoming an epidemic in America.
Right. I've got an uncle that he doesn't even know who I am anymore. And he's not, it's just a bummer. And I don't want to be in that situation. So I want to do everything I can to avoid that. My genetic markers are kind of a little bit of a setup for that. So, but we do know now that we don't have to play out our genes and how that
slaves
goes.
to that, right?
Yeah. So sleep's a huge thing for that. And I would say to anybody who can just do 7 hours or whatever, there are things you can do during the day to make that the absolute best it can be, in my opinion. Like we all know, the waking up in the morning, lights hitting the eyes, getting some exercise in the morning, playing the game during the evening where, you're winding down appropriately, you're off screens and all that sort of stuff. And you're in the mindset of whether it be meditation or whatever, or journaling, leaving your issues on the paper and, just having a routine where you can really shut it off.
The term for that I've heard thrown around now, and it seems like sleep is one of those things. It's funny because like, I feel like 10 years ago, we were having this conversation, there would have been a lot out there, but today, if you look up sleep hygiene, there's so much out there on this topic, right? About what you can do to optimize, for the last 2 hours of the day and the first 2 hours of the day. People don't realize it, but the morning actually has a huge impact on your next night's sleep, right? It's not just what you do right before bed. It's actually the both and the before and after you sleep that has an impact on it.
Yeah. We think about our morning routine, but we need to, and Jeff Dermer talked about this a lot, is we need to think of our evening routine as being part of the next day.
Yeah. That's good.
Anyway.
So my challenge to anybody listening to this who's like I was and would have been really skeptical about sleep is like, the challenge would be do a week, commit to a week where you sleep 8 hours a night and just watch how your body changes, your mind changes, your resilience, your ability to manage. So I do a lot of our work that we do today. The consultancy I run is all about interpersonal relational intelligence, right? How do people work well between themselves in work contexts? And so one of the things I've realized is people that get a lot of sleep and they're well rested, they're dramatically more capable of dealing with interpersonal stress without having a blow up or without showing up in a way that they don't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people end up losing influence in their career because they're great for a long period of time and they have one moment of weakness and they say something or do something that really negatively influences their influence with others. And so often it comes back to, well, XYZ happened and I only got 4 hours of sleep last night or 5 hours of sleep or whatever the case is. And so, that I would just challenge anybody that's listening to this, if you're skeptical about sleep, try it for a week and just see the difference in how you show up.
Yeah.
Okay. We skipped 2. You want to
we
hit
did.
those
We
2
did.
kind of quick?
You bet. So body composition,
Body comp,
DEXA
everybody's
scan.
favorite and least favorite to go through.
Yeah. So that's like, looking at the framework of the person. I think it's just such low hanging fruit to get that piece of information. It's not that expensive. Wherever you're at, just go get a DEXA scan with body composition. The 2 most important things that I care about on that is visceral adiposity. So the visceral adipose tissue, which we can talk about for a second, and then the bone mineral density. Yeah. Tells me a lot about, if there's been, poor nutrition or, because that's something that needs to be fixed early on because it can, we have a risk of falls later in life. Hip fracture raises the hazard ratio for death and disability pretty quickly.
What was the statistic? If you break a hip after the age of 65, you're 50% likely to be dead within a year.
I knew you were going to ask me this. It's bad though. I'll tell you that.
It's
hazard ratio is like 2 or 3. It's dramatic.
So the whole idea is if you don't have good bone density and you break a bone later in life, it dramatically increases your likelihood of all-cause mortality, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to visceral adiposity, visceral adipose tissue, which is something we've learned a lot about. I have learned a lot about since working with you.
Right.
So explain to us what that is.
So it's basically the fat below our abdominal wall musculature. So beneath there. So
inside our belly, right?
Not the subcutaneous,
not the fluffy stuff on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, and it acts differently metabolically. It's inflammatory, which leads back to what we were saying before, right? Which actually plays a part into cardiovascular disease and cancers, other problems, metabolic issues. So having and we like that to be, I like it to be a pound or less, but I'll take it under 2. That's great. I can't tell you the number of times that we've seen people that might look good in a suit, and we've talked about this, but they can have 4 pounds, 5 pounds of visceral adipose tissue.
Skinny fat, right?
Yeah.
You don't look like you're fat, but when you take the scan on the inside, it's like you might not have a lot above the muscle wall, but you have a lot inside. Is that genetic? as far as like why some people have a tendency to store more fat internally and some externally, or is it lifestyle?
I'd say it's more lifestyle. I may be wrong there, but that's just my opinion. Yeah. I mean, we all have, there's been some information that we only have so many fat cells. And then so whenever we spill over, to more, due to insulin resistance or whatever, then we start
calories. Yeah.
Then we start packing it away on the inside, which is just a set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So same question as before, or do you want to hit bone density and then talk about what we can do to impact both of them?
Oh, the other thing, we look at is bone density on we can talk about that. It just tells us how essentially strong your bones are. Yeah. And we look at the Z score there.
And what's our number we're trying to get to on bone density?
It needs to be like 2 on the Z score or higher. I mean, the more, the better.
Yeah. Can't have bones that are too dense.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back to, if we're calling it body composition, and really body composition kind of breaks down into visceral adiposity and bone density. So those are the 2 numbers you're looking at most.
Yeah.
Body fat %, does that play in there at all? Or is it just less important than those other 2?
I think it's less important than the other 2. Okay. I mean, I think it's important? Absolutely. But if you work on your visceral adipose tissue with things we'll talk about, that's going to come down.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's what I've observed even from our work together is everything I did to try to drive my visceral adipose tissue down also drove my total fat tissue down significantly.
Yeah.
There's a huge ratio that's there.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do we do? Lifestyle standpoint, what do we, if the goal is we want to have strong bones and we want to have a minimal amount of fat inside the muscle wall, what do we do to impact those 2?
Again, I mean, it's going to be
sleep, cardio,
exercise, the insulin resistance. If you're churning out insulin all the time and you're living in a high glucose state, or not even a high glucose state, if you have a lot of insulin, you're going to be packing away fat.
Yeah.
Is really the end game there. And that's going to act against you.
The one I haven't heard you say on lead indicators yet that I'm surprised by, I haven't heard you talk about resistance training.
Oh, yeah.
So lift heavy things.
Well, it kind of talked about the insulin resistance with improving lean muscle, but yeah, okay, absolutely.
So does that play in here on, if I'm trying to drive up bone density, like if I'm currently lifting high rep, low weight, and I shift that and I start focusing on your favorite word, time under tension, where I'm doing heavier weights and I'm doing eccentric movements, which is you explode up and then you slowly lower back down. It's things that you've kind of helped me modify that I've seen results from. Is that universal or is that unique to my case?
No, that's pretty universal, I would say. I mean, especially as you get more bang for your buck with time under tension, right? So slowly controlling that weight down. And whenever you're doing that full set, kind of snuggling up, like I call it, snuggling up to failure, gun to the head, you could get 3 more out maybe. Even before then, using adequate, good form is going to be important. First and foremost form. And then second, we're going to talk about that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
There was another practitioner I listened to who said the number one thing you can do for all-cause mortality is resistance training. Which that was surprising to me because so many people talk so much about cardio.
Somebody asked Jerry Seinfeld, you might have seen this.
I love Seinfeld, but
how have you aged so well? Because he doesn't look as old as he is. No. And he said, lift weights and espresso.
I'm doing great on both fronts then.
Yeah.
But if espresso is one of your KPIs, I am going to lift to 130.
So the deck says, as far as the body composition, and I'm going to, we do talk about I saw somebody this morning, BMI was great and everything, but her body composition was pretty high, like 37%. So she's really just under muscled. We need to add some lean muscle onto her, and we're doing some other things, but that's really important because as we age, we're going to continually lean, if Mother Nature has its way, we're going to slowly lose lean muscle.
And I guess that's an interesting question. Obviously I've heard that and I understand that. Is there what's the average age? Like your body's good at photosynthesis, creating protein until a certain point. Yeah. And at some point your body's just, you can have the testosterone wherever it is. You can chug all the protein shakes. Your body's just not going to build new muscle. What is that break point for most people?
I kind of start thinking about 40.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Is whenever we stop making proteins as well. I mean, there's been some discussions on this for sure, but
so it's not necessarily that there's a hard cutoff. You just lose effectiveness over a period of time.
Yeah, so your protein needs are much higher as we get north of 40.
Yeah, this is probably the one for me. Like when I was thinking about this episode and this topic, the DEXA scan's probably the one for me where it clicked. Where I'm like, when I started understanding macros and going, okay, macronutrients and carbs, protein, and fat to go, okay, if I can get X amount of protein and I can lift X number of days a week and I keep my calories under Y, I mean, like literally just watch my body change in 90 days between DEXA scan measurements. And that's where I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's so empowering because it's so simple to understand those inputs.
Yeah.
And then to see the output was very inspiring.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that is a lot of fun. Whenever you repeat the DEXA, those things turn into graphs and you see changes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you got one more on there?
So yeah, I guess we already covered movement, strength, and stability.
Oh yeah, so that was your last one, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
We hit that one a little bit early. Talk to me about stability though. That's an interesting one because it seems like now the thing I'm seeing, and this may just be the algorithms and me, but so much about flexibility, mobility. Yeah. So how does that play into this whole equation?
Yeah. Strength is important. You know, cardiorespiratory fitness is super important. Stability is important. I mean, you see, and I see it. I mean, we see it in our, parents, and, I hate to, is there some unsteadiness in the way people start walking and moving in their 75, 80, and there's some real instability. I mean, you see it all the time. If you're at a store, you're like, oh, somebody's about to fall. They just don't look very stable. And that's a setup.
They look feeble, right?
Yeah. And that's a real risk. Like we talked about before, hazard ratio shoots to the roof. You fall, you break something, you break a hip. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times, even just my time in the ER, not only the hip fractures, especially, I mean, forget a little ice storm that comes up, then it just starts coming in.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine.
But then the other sad things are, fall, hit your head bleed. That's so falls are a huge deal. And that kind of starts now by you and me, guys our age, 60s, older, really working on stability. And that would be, squats, lunges, that sort of thing, because you're not going to catch up. You're going to prep for that time. I mean, we're training for those periods of life because, we're going to be heli skiing at that time, not heli snowboarding, heli skiing, I said.
I'm going to be on a board and look a lot cooler, Kevin.
I'm going to Deer Valley and you're not invited.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
They don't take boarders there, right?
They're too snooty for that, too old money.
But yeah, I hope that answered that sort of question.
So I've got a question then on that one. For mobility, working out, like moving, what's a number you would put on that? Like if I'm trying to think of it as a KPI and I'm looking at it and going like, okay, is it green? Is it yellow? Is it red? What's the number I'm looking at to determine whether or not I'm good on that front?
It's a good question. What's the number? What's the measurement is what you're saying.
What's the measurement? What am I measuring to determine like, okay, I'm on track there? Because like ApoB, we get a blood test result back, right? BMI, or not BMI, but your DEXA scan, you're getting numbers, you're getting bone density, and you're getting, your visceral adiposity, like there's numbers on a sheet. But if it's like movement or like mobility, is there a way to measure that? Or is that just a little bit more subjective where you just have to go, don't sit on your tail all the time, be up moving around?
A lot of that's going to be subjective. You could put, and may need to cut this out, but if you could do a farmer carry with like, a 35-pound weight walking around from one room to another, a biggest marker would be, this is probably better, getting up from a seated position on the ground.
Okay. Without using your hands?
Without using your hands would be huge. If you can just use one.
So you sit down cross-legged and it's like, can you get up without
supporting yourself?
Yeah.
That would be excellent.
Okay.
If you maybe just do it with one hand slightly, that might be a little cheating, but you could do that. But that's I did that with my dad the other day. And,
How old's your dad?
He's, he just turned 80.
Wow. Was he able to do it?
No.
He was not able to get up with no hands. That's a pretty high bar for an 80-year-old.
No, but yeah, one, or maybe one hand would be something. But that's asking a lot. It's tough.
Yeah. So we've already got people like you're lifting, you're doing cardio. Like there's obviously a lifestyle commitment that you're making if you want to live an optimal lifestyle, or just something like yoga or Pilates or something that's less maybe intense, but more focused on some of that balance and mobility pieces. Where do they fit into the equation, if at all?
Oh, I think they're great. I have my mom in Pilates.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just layer them in kind of as you, maybe not as critical as the resistance and the cardio, but
yeah, but some people don't like, they're just not going to lift. They're not going to do any of that kind of, which is fine.
Yeah.
Just find something you're going to do, some degree of resistance weight training. So I would do Pilates for sure.
Yeah.
Or I'd recommend that to somebody because, we have a lot of women who appreciate that whole atmosphere. Yeah. And if it's going to be something because like you said, this is a lifestyle. And I talk about people just, doing a few of these things that we've discussed and equate it with brushing your teeth, because most people brush their teeth every day.
Yeah. And I think that, like, kind of to bring it into land, I'll just say, like, for me, that's been, you said this to me over and over and over, and it's good that you have, which is it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
And my tendency with my personality, I tend to get really into something. I nerd out on it, I do all kinds of research. I go hard at it. And then I get bored and I kind of drift away from it. Over time, I end up, and then the next thing you know, it's like I'm not doing any of those things. And so I've really tried to embrace that mantra and just go, I'm not going to dramatically change my lifestyle overnight, but I'm going to start layering on things one at a time. So the first was sleep, and to go, I've got a whoop, I'm going to track my sleep, and I'm really going to challenge myself to be intentional about giving my body the rest it needs.
Yeah.
Then it was lifting, and it's like, okay, I'm going to get consistent on resistance training. I've been in pretty good on that front. So, I mean, that's for my personal story. I don't know. Some people out there are like, I've got some friends that are like, they're just disciplined machines. It's like once they program it, they can run on it and they never stop. But I think the key thing is realizing it is a process that you're committing to for a long period of time. I'm in my mid 40s, right? And so the way I look at it is I've got 20 years or so on the front end to really impact optimal state, so that by the time I'm in my mid 60s, I'm as primed as I can be, so that last 20 or 30 years or 40 years of aging, I'm optimized to be able to really enjoy that period of time and to have a lifestyle that other people, might not be able to have if they don't make those same choices. Not that it's us against the world, but it's kind of us against ourselves, right? Which is to go, I want to give my grandkids, my great grandkids, the gift of having somebody in their life that not only, has the wisdom of having lived for 65 years, but also the vitality to be able to go out and be involved in what they're doing and not feel like my body or my mind are detriments and anchors to me being able to go do what I want to do and have the impact I want to have throughout the rest of my life. So that's kind of my mindset. And so again, thank you for taking the time to share all this with me and with everybody else, because it's extremely empowering to know that there are things that we can control, that we can do, that will have a direct impact on, our biomarkers, which ultimately increase the likelihood of aging well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun.
So yeah, it's been a good time. Did you enjoy it? Did I drive you crazy asking much questions? Can you tell me the particular bio? Where does the hemoglobin bind to the?
Yeah, that was great. Well, thanks a lot, man. And
I just realized my watch stopped, so I have no idea what time it is. I didn't wind it before we get 5 more minutes.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. I appreciate everybody. So real quick point about lean muscle mass and everything you discussed. And we were talking about stability and everything. Everybody that I've seen in their 80s or 90 that's aged really well, that I've just met or talked to at some of the places I go, they always have a good lean muscle structure. Every one of them, there's been no exception. So I think that's really needs to be a big piece of the puzzle for that reason. If we're reverse engineering how these people are aging that are doing it right, to kind of follow that path as best we can, I think that's super important. So,
well, that kind of makes sense, because if you think about when you're talking about stability, like obviously if you have more muscle, you're going to be more balanced because you have better ability to control your body. And then some of those other things you were talking about, like obviously if having lean muscle mass increases your insulin resistance or increases your ability to manage insulin.
Right.
I keep saying that wrong.
Yeah.
That would tie in. So that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. Just wanted to include that. Anything else we should say?
So to wrap it all up today, you've given us kind of 7 or 8 things that we can focus on in order to help, as lag indicators. But it sounds like the lead indicators are, kind of pretty, I don't want to say self-explanatory, but move, cardio.
Yeah.
Right. Diet. Don't eat heavy processed foods or high cholesterol foods, foods that are high in saturated fat. Right. We're going to focus on making sure that we've got good, lean, muscle structure through resistance training, and then being really aware of the way that all those inputs are affecting our body, and then just kind of watching and measuring them over time.
You know, that's one good way to kind of sum this up. And this is, the 4 big things, right? And OptiSpan uses this as, this group that I've been kind of connected with. And it's really well put. It's called Move, Eat, Sleep, Connect. And we've talked about all those things, movement. We've talked about eating. I put that, everything you ingest, right? And then sleep. We've talked about that. And then connect. We didn't really talk about that at all. Yeah. How important that is really for longevity.
Let's hit on that for a minute. I mean, that's obviously my, that's our kind of bread and butter, so to speak. So talk a little bit about why connecting is so important.
Well, I mean, they did that Harvard study, right? And they took people from, 2 different socioeconomic groups, and they followed them. And the people that were connected, they, lived better, lived longer, everything else, the same. In the same way with, the poor, lesser economic group. And then we found that, there's a lot of.
So basically, whether you're rich or poor, if you've got relationships,
right,
and you got community, you're going to be more likely to age well.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Isn't that interesting? And it's like, duh, of course it is. I mean, take the pandemic for, everybody's separated and the hardship that they gave on, people take grief, there's this lady, Emma Payne, which we'll have on the podcast soon. She was, a really interesting story, but really an expert on grief, but how that really is a real indicator how you handle that as to your longevity. You take a spouse, you lose a spouse, the husband or, the widow is, in a tough situation unless they're connected.
Right. Basically, they're a lot more likely to die sooner if they don't have strong community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're, really meant to live in a community. We're really meant to communicate with each other. Yeah.
That feels even more relevant in 2025 than it ever has.
Yeah.
Just because it is so, I mean, there's a loneliness epidemic that you hear about, and that's probably more relevant with younger people, but like the idea that, we have artificial everything. I mean, we can order our food on DoorDash. We can get an unlimited amount of consumption through Netflix or, there's so much content that's out there to be consumed that we can end up isolating ourselves and just end up in a scenario. And so what you're saying is that medically, scientifically, it's proven that if you do that, you're increasing your likelihood of aging poorly. And then if instead you'll engage in community in the real world, surrounded by people that you do life with, that you're more likely to thrive. That's awesome. That's really, that to me feels intuitively right. So it's encouraging to know that, that the medical community backs that up. It's good.
Cool.
So to wrap it up on those 4 things, like it's kind of the last thought I would have to leave us with today. This may be my third last thought, but the last thought, I think the actual last thought is, again, getting back to the parallel in the business world, which is to go, when you first start implementing a goal and you're working towards a long-term goal and you're implementing these KPIs and saying, okay, we're going to set a goal that to say by the end of the year, we want to drive revenue to X, or we want to drive customer satisfaction to Y, or whatever the case is. Part of the process is to go, okay, we're going to develop a plan. We're going to go execute our plan. We're going to gather data. And then on some regular interval, usually monthly, but on some regular interval, we're going to get back together and go, okay, what's working? Like, what are our lead indicators showing? How's that affecting lag indicators? And we're going to observe, and then we're going to measure the plan. So I just want to bring this back to bragging on you again in your practice of what the reason I love working with you is because every quarter I come in and we sit down, we look at the data and go, what is the data showing about how well Chris's lifestyle is creating the data points, the biomarkers that are leading to the ultimate goal, which is thriving as I age. And so I just, it's a props to you and to what you're building at Prime Health and the community that you're creating of people that are feeling empowered to really put the time and energy into investments on the front end to impact their health. But then B, again, for some of those people out there that are the hard charging, highly driven people, Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to, dramatically change your lifestyle in a quarter, but what you can do is make some changes, observe how they're working, modify the system a little bit, modify your diet a little bit, modify your workouts a little bit, do that for 90 days and measure again. Yeah. And so again, it gets back to that idea of like that regular process of measurement, evaluation, adjustment, execution, measurement, execution, evaluation, adjustment. Like it's all a cycle that works together that, leads to the ability to actually make an impact over the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to follow those things. And it is a lot of fun because then you can pivot on what's working and what's not. And a lot of people think, oh, I got to give up my vices or this problem or that. And it's like, not really, we can work with that. I've got a guy who says, I'm not going to stop drinking. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's just maybe curtail that a little bit and then we'll work on what we can. So yeah, you can definitely make some small pivots and make some huge changes. So
tailored too, because the way one person's body reacts to alcohol is completely different to another person's.
Oh yeah.
So, in theory, if you can optimize everything and your biomarkers look where they are and you're drinking Y a week, go for it. But if you do everything you can and you can't, then that might mean that's the one last barrier that you need to consider changing, right? But you're not making that decision based off of guilt or an ought to, or just a sense of obligation. You're doing it because that's what the data shows.
Yeah. The cards you're dealt. You understand 100%. That. Yeah.
It's unique to you. And that's, again, I've really enjoyed working with you in your practice, and this KPI idea has been something that's been, really helpful to me. And so I appreciate you letting me come on and ask a bunch of questions and kind of hopefully introduce that same idea to some other people.
Yeah, cool. Hopefully it was helpful. Awesome. It's been fun.
All right. Hopefully that was our final wrap up. Taylor's like, get out.